You won't believe what heaven really looks like. Shocking biblical revelations found today. In the heart of a seemingly ordinary town, an ancient book surfaced from the depths of an old dusty attic. People gathered as if drawn by an invisible force, eyes wide and hearts racing. This wasn't just any book. Whispers said it contained secrets that would shake the foundations of their beliefs. As the pages turned, they revealed vivid descriptions of a paradise bursting with creatures that flickered like fireflies, each one alive with color so rich it could make rainbows feel dull. The sky was a strange, mesmerizing hue, pulsating with energy, almost as if it had its own heartbeat. Suddenly, an unexpected chill swept through the crowd. A woman, trembling and pale, pointed towards a passage where it spoke of a great judgment, a scene of thunderous roars and a blinding light that left everyone gasping. Gasps and murmurs spread like wildfire. Their breaths hitched as they imagined the terrifying yet exquisite sight of angels wielding swords, hovering over clouds that glimmered with starlight. A wave of curiosity collided with fear, tightening chests and raising hairs on the back of necks. What did this mean? What were they really facing? Just then, a loud clap echoed from the old church nearby, shaking the ground beneath them. The sound froze everyone in place, hearts racing, pulses pounding in sync. It felt as if the very universe watched and waited. Panic began to sway like a pendulum of uncertainty. With wide eyes, the townsfolk wondered if this had something to do with these revelations. Was heaven closer than they thought? Or was the facade merely a veil hiding something far darker? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the air thickened with suspense, another wave of silence fell, lifting the tension like a mist. It all felt too real. The ominous fate detailed in the book loomed over them. Just then, a shimmering light appeared in the distance, illuminating the end of the block. Was it a trick of the mind or a sign from above? As people squinted, shadows flickered and danced at the edges of their vision. What lay ahead drew them in, promising both danger and discovery. Questions hung in the air, heavy and relentless. What did the light mean? Did it hold the answers they so desperately sought? Or was it merely the beginning of something much more terrifying? The glow intensified, a fierce light cutting through the thickening fog. It wasn't just a flicker, this was a beacon, drawing both the curious and the fearful. Murmurs vibrated through the crowd, a soft swell of disbelief mixed with the heat of anxiety. Faced with this radiant blaze, they were torn between instinct and intrigue. What if it revealed answers or worse, unleashed horrors? A figure emerged from the light, the edges blurring, shifting like a mirage against the dark asphalt. Whispers trickled through the audience. Is it an angel? A spirit? They could hardly breathe, eyes fixed on the silhouette. The figure raised an arm, and the crowd took a collective step back, hearts thumping like war drums, echoing solidarity and fear as the figure came closer. The crowd could see it was a woman dressed in a flowing white gown, her hair cascading like silver over her shoulders. Her face was impossibly beautiful but emotionless, like a porcelain doll. Listen, she intoned, her voice clear yet shrouded in an ethereal echo. What lies ahead you must understand. The townsfolk leaned in, captivated yet terrified. She continued, heaven and hell dwell not just above and below, but intertwined, beyond the realms of understanding. Each word hit them like cold water, awakening deep-seated fears. The line between good and evil started to blur, painting a reality that felt incredibly close yet had always seemed remote. What do you mean? Shouted a man from the back, trembling but determined, his voice carrying the weight of the crowd's uncertainty. Are you saying heaven is not just blissful? That we could enough? She interrupted sharply. Your very souls are in jeopardy. The sudden bite of her words silenced the chatter, ringing in their ears. The judgment is upon you now. Those who remain ignorant are the first to fall. Her statement cracked the air, sending anxiety rippling through the crowd. Curiosity morphed into desperation. People started to shift. Legs trembled beneath them as they instinctively sought information or an escape. Suddenly, the book in the man's hands flared with light, its pages fluttering as if caught in an invisible wind. The crowd gasped. The woman's eyes locked onto the book. "It knows too," she exclaimed, her gaze piercing through the chaos. "These truths never should have surfaced. You dare to read what was hidden for your protection. What should we do?" A voice cried out, panic rising like a wave. "Is there a way to survive? Wisdom in the face of judgment is your only ally," she proclaimed, then stepped backward into the light, fading away, leaving behind an electric silence. The glow weakened, but the crowd remained frozen, hearts still thrumming after the revelation. Echoes of fear lingered in the air, mingling with uncertainty. The questions felt heavier now, demanding answers that were far from clear. As people began to recover from their shock, a trapped breath escaped one woman at the front. "We need to find the meaning of this," she urged, finding the courage to step forward. It seemed her voice sparked a movement. Others began to murmur in agreement. Suddenly, the sky shifted, clouds swirling unnaturally, a backdrop for the chaos below. Whispers spiraled into fervent chatter. What lay ahead? Knowledge or doom? The crowd turned their eyes toward the now dimming light. Was it an omen of heed or a beckoning call to arms? What was in the shadows? And just as quickly as it started, another clap of thunder resonated ominously, louder than before, shaking their resolve. Something was approaching, something that no one could anticipate. Could the truth be more terrifying than ignorance? The answer loomed ominously over them, dark and tantalizing, waiting just beyond the light. Would they dare seek it? A hush fell over the crowd, thickening the air like fog. Faces, now pale and tense, etched lines of worry that spoke of sleepless nights and buried thoughts. They stood frozen, but beneath the surface, the tide of panic was churning. A flicker of sunlight broke through the clouds, reflecting off a distant surface, but was it a promise or a threat? "What do we do now?" Someone shouted, their voice fragmented, clawing through the stillness. It pierced the collective fear, awakening movement in the crowd as desperation simmered to the forefront. A heavy silence hung, but it was sliced by the gasp from another in the back. The book, the secrets inside. There it sat, that cursed tome, a beacon of knowledge flickering like the remnants of the woman's glow. Its pages rustled gently now, though the evening air had turned stale and cold. The man who held it was trembling, his knuckles pale against the dark binding. He looked every bit like he was holding a ticking bomb. "What are we waiting for? We need answers," shouted a woman with fiery determination, brushing past her neighbors. Her voice was strong and cracked, ringing like a bell in the darkness, urging others to discard their paralyzing fear. With a trembling hand, the man opened the book again, the pages glowing faintly under the dimming sky. The letters leapt to life, forming lines that twisted and turned like the tumultuous thoughts plaguing the crowd. Gasps erupted as vivid images sprang forth. "Wisdom, wisdom," he muttered, eyes racing over the text. "The judgment of souls." Nightmares manifested. At that moment he read aloud, "And so it is written. What once was bound shall rise, and what once was light shall intersect with shadows. Beware. You who seek knowledge shall unravel that which is already undone." The meaning hung heavy in the air like a weight pressing down. Fear turned to horror as the crowd exchanged glances, faces pale and alarmed. What did it mean? A low rumble echoed from the distance, the earth rumbling like it was starting to awaken. "I don't like this," someone murmured. "We're not ready for what's to come." The man's brow furrowed as he flipped ahead, consumed by an insatiable thirst for answers. "We can't ignore this. There has to be more." With a renewed fervor, he read on, his voice rising over the deepening storm clouds. Just then, The ground beneath their feet trembled, shaking them to their knees. People cried out, hands clutching the earth, eyes wide with fear as buildings began to sway. The flickering light seemed to pulse, as if sharing in the chaos, and the sky darkened further. An ink blot swallowing the day, a flash of lightning streaked across the canvas of black above them, illuminating twisted shapes in the distant shadows moving, creeping closer, undulating with ominous intent. Run! Someone shouted, and chaos erupted. Bodies dashed for safety, the sound of scrambling feet competing against the thunder and the shrieks that mingled with the roar of the wind. The man holding the book stood paralyzed, the glow still emanating from its pages, utterly entranced. For him, the fear was replaced with an insatiable curiosity. Just a little more, he thought. Just one more secret to uncover. Suddenly, the book flared, and a flood of images washed over him, toying with his mind. Visions of heaven and hell, entwined, promising salvation but delivering anguish. He staggered back, gripped by terror and wonder all at once. What he witnessed would change everything, shaking his very understanding of reality. But in that moment, a shadow loomed large, rushing toward him, swallowing the light. Get away from him! Someone screamed, but it was too late. What had he revealed? As the ground cracked and thunder roared, they stood on the brink of a revelation steeped in peril. All they had sought for answers was maybe about to become their worst nightmare. Yet deep within those swirling storms, something more awaited. Something that hinted at a truth none could imagine. A cloaked figure emerged from the chaos, eyes glimmering with knowledge. Would the crowd dare to confront it, or had they already sealed their fate? The crowd recoiled as the shadow emerged, a dark silhouette cutting through the chaos like a knife. Whispers of terror rippled among them, voices vibrating with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Some staggered away from the sight, their hearts pounding, while others leaned in, eyes wide, drawn to the figure with an almost magnetic pull. Who are you? The trembling voice of the woman who first demanded answers broke through the tumult. Her eyes searched the cloaked figure, a mix of fear and defiance flickering in her gaze. In that vampiric silence, the figure lifted a hand, the hood slipping back just enough to reveal gleaming eyes that seemed to capture the darkest corners of their souls. I am the Harbinger, it intoned, voice rich and resonant, echoing across the rubble-strewn square. Gasps erupted as a wave of dread washed over them. The Harbinger took a step forward, the fabric of the cloak swirling around as if it possessed a life of its own. Thunder cracked in the distance, a furious echo of the already turbulent sky. Your quest for knowledge has awakened the Ancient Ones. It continued, each word sending chills rippling down spines. Their bond, once severed, is now rethreaded by your curiosity. You have invoked the past shadows that should remain buried are rising. And they will not come quietly. A collective murmur enveloped the crowd, their faces pale in the dim light that cast an eerie glow over the scene. Thoughts raced through their minds. Were they truly the architects of this chaos? Could they really be responsible for unleashing nightmares? The man with the book tightened his grip, rallying a mix of frustration and fear. We can't simply let this happen. We need to understand what's coming. His heart thumped loudly in his chest as he focused on the Harbinger. What do we do? Knowledge comes at a price, the mysterious figure answered, eyes shimmering like cold stars in a vast void. Seek that which you have awakened. Face the horrors and the truths you have long denied. Only then can you hope to avert disaster. And just like that, the Harbinger's eyes flickered, and their gaze turned to the book the man clutched tightly. You have tapped into the reservoir of forgotten souls. What you seek lies within. Fear clawed at the edges of their resolve. The air was thick with apprehension, a palpable tension hanging like storm clouds overhead. Faces turned to the man, desperation etched in their features. What's the next move? Someone asked, a shaky edge betraying their bravery. I don't know, he replied, uncertainty creeping into his voice. Inside him, the words of the book rattled like caged birds demanding release. He glanced at the pages, each one pulsed with a strange, rhythmic energy that mirrored the growing storm. But we must open it again. We have to confront whatever lies ahead. A low growl resonated from behind them. Faint at first, then louder, it transformed into a cacophonous roar. The crowd spun as shadows emerged from the darkness, spilling forth like ink from an overturned well. "Run!" The defiant woman yelled again, but it was too late. The shadows surged forward, almost hungry. They twisted and danced, taking form nightmarish figures with hollowed eyes and a hunger that echoed in their chilling cries. "I in the chaos." The man grasped the book tighter, feeling its warmth seep into his skin, igniting a flicker of bravery. "Wait," he shouted, voice fighting against the cacophony. Maybe it can help us." What terror had they unleashed? What answers would the book provide when opened? The crowd froze for a heart-stopping moment, caught between hopelessness and the possibility of salvation. The shadows crashed closer, and chaos spiraled deeper. Did they still have a chance? The darkness surged like a tidal wave. As they backed away, a flicker of light from the pages beamed bravely against the shadows, illuminating their path ahead. Would they dare to delve into the answers, risking the very fate of their existence? Only time would tell. Darkness engulfed them. The shadows lunged with ferocity, wailing as if the very essence of fear had taken voice. The crowd, frozen in dread, recoiled further, a collective pulse of terror binding them to the earth. Only the man with the book remained anchored, a flicker of defiance igniting in his chest. "Everybody focus," he shouted, voice trembling against the chaos. The shadows writhed and twisted, their forms changing, becoming grotesque caricatures of despair. "We need to hold together." The defiant woman, still standing beside him, steeled her gaze. "What's that light?" she asked, eyes locked onto the book, now pulsing with energy like a heartbeat. "I don't know," he gasped, every word dripping with urgency. "But it might be our only chance." Thunder rumbled again, a warning or a promise. The shadows closed in, fangs glistening in the faint light. He felt the heat of their breath, rancid and cold, sending shivers down his spine. But beneath the terror, a resolve sparked. The book had called to them, and now it demanded action. With a shaky hand, he flipped it open. The pages rustled violently, revealing intricate symbols that glowed as though alive. The harbinger's warning echoed in his mind: "Face the horrors and the truths you have long denied." As if on cue, the shadows halted, their collective onslaught arrested by the glowing light. The crowd gasped, and in that moment of hesitation, the man understood. "It's asking us to confront it, to acknowledge what is hidden." "What does that even mean?" The woman shot back, eyes darting between him and the encroaching terror. "Everything we've ignored, the fears we've buried." He felt the weight of the past pressing down on him. "We have to remember what we've lost, what we've denied, or they'll consume us." He shouted into the void, "We are not afraid." The words resonated, bouncing off the shadows as uncertainty painted their faces. They looked at each other, a flicker of grit igniting in the depths of despair. But just then, a shadow leapt forward, its form morphing into a familiar fear, a loved one's haunting face. The crowd recoiled at the sight, a wave of pain washing over them. "No! Get it away!" someone screamed, hands covering their eyes as though they could shut it out. "Fight it!" the woman yelled, summoning her voice amidst the din. "Remember who we are." But the shadows pushed back harder, clawing their way into minds, digging deep into traumas long buried. "The more you remember, the more you forget," a chorus of voices whispered, twisting the truth. The man pressed the book against his heart, feeling its warmth spread like sunshine in the storm. "We can choose. Remember the joy, the strength." He reached into his memories, pulling out moments of love, laughter, all the things that made life worth living. And suddenly, the light from the book brightened, illuminating the crowd as it absorbed their collective memories. Joy erupted like a firework, a rush of emotion surging through them. The shadows recoiled, shrieking as they shrank in its presence. The man felt them retreat, stumbling back into the abyss. "Keep it alive," he yelled, urging everyone to hold onto that light. "We can push them away." The battle raged, Each flicker of light fought against encroaching darkness, hope battling despair. Yet, deep inside the man's heart, a troubling thought resonated. What if these shadows weren't just monsters, but reflections of themselves? As the shadows hesitated, the book's light flickered, revealing visions of the very destinies they dared not face. Fear gripped him as the shadows reformulated, not just as past trauma but as potential futures, a world split apart by their choices. Run! Someone shouted again, but this time their faces were twisted not just in fear but in realization. Would they turn and flee, or would they confront their future together? As the air thickened with tension, the man locked eyes with the woman, determination sparking in her gaze. And in that fleeting moment, a new urgency began to pulse through the crowd. They could sense it. An awakening, a possibility, as dawn broke softly along the horizon beyond the shadows. But would they step into the light, or would they be lost to the darkness forever? The answer waited just out of reach. The world shifted. The weight of impending choice hung thick and heavy, like an invisible blanket pressing down on each person. The shadows recoiled, their jagged edges curling in the light, but the haunting faces remained. Memories twisted, morphing into an amalgamation of fear, a cacophony of accusations and regrets. "Look at them," the woman said, panic slipping into her voice. "They know us, they know our pain." The man nodded, heart racing. Memories surged within him, moments of betrayal, loss, and mistakes. Shadows whispered their truth. "You cannot escape your own failures, no." He clenched his jaw, willing himself to push it away. "These aren't truths. They're lies we tell ourselves." As his voice rose, a flame ignited within those around him, a wave of courage surging through the crowd. They began to murmur, words rising like an anthem. "We are not defined by our fears." The book in his hands began to hum, each pulse matching the rhythm of their voices. A flash of light erupted, casting the deepest shadows into retreat. Yet the energy felt tenuous, like a single thread holding back a tidal wave of darkness. "Together," the woman shouted, her words slicing through the tension like a knife. "We have to confront them together." A collective breath, a shared resolve, and the crowd started to step forward. One by one, they faced the looming images that had paralyzed them. "You don't control me," someone cried out, eyes narrowing defiantly at the apparition of a long-lost friend. "I can't forget," another voice quivered, but then steadied, "but I can forgive." With each voice that joined, the specters faltered, as though the shadows' grasp weakened against their reaffirming declarations. The book glowed brighter, piercing through the encroaching darkness, illuminating the soil of their shared suffering. The air was electric. They fought against the shadows with every clenched fist and wild heartbeat. Yet, the shadows sought to claw at them with raw depiction, tearing at vulnerabilities. In the chaos, a single figure faltered, a young man at the fringe of the group. "Help me," he whispered, as a shadow coiled around him, dark tendrils wrapping tighter and tighter. "No," the man yelled, fear racing within him. Without thinking, he sprinted toward the young man, tearing through the crowd. The shadows hissed, trying to snatch him back, but the light surged with his determination. "Hold on," he shouted, grasping the young man's hand. "You are more than this." In that moment, the light burst like fireworks, starting a chain reaction. The crowd began to rally, their voices rising higher, a soaring chorus of defiance. Emotions, raw and authentic, mingled in the air. The young man's fear began to dissolve, replaced by hope as he realized the power in their unity. I can fight this." His voice faltered but gained strength. The shadows howled, a deafening roar that shook the ground beneath them, but it was no match for the unified hearts. In a brilliant explosion of light, a barrier formed, pushing the darkness away, an invisible shield forged from their collective courage. But just when it seemed the tide had turned, the ground trembled. An ear-splitting crack echoed around them, pulling their focus. From the depths of the shadows emerged a monstrous figure, larger and darker than anything they had faced before. It loomed over them, eyes burning red, full of rage. "This is not over." it bellowed, voice echoing like thunder. "You think you can escape me?" The crowd shuddered, uncertainty creeping back into their hearts like icy fingers. The light from the book flickered, dimming against the formidable threat. The man turned to the woman, fear mingling with resolve. "We have to stand our ground. This is it. We need to believe in the power we've found." As fear wrestled with hope, the eyes of the crowd turned, poised for their next move. The man clasped the book tightly, its power surging within him, leaving one burning question echoing in the hearts of all: could they overcome even this final, terrifying embodiment of their fears? The answer lay just ahead, shrouded in shadow. And light, the monstrous figure loomed above them, a silhouette crafted from every flicker of doubt and failure they had ever faced. Its eyes glowed like molten embers, igniting fear that sent ripples through the crowd. The man could feel their determination waver, like a candle flickering in the wind. An icy dread settled in his chest. "Focus," he shouted, his own voice trembling slightly. "We brushed aside these shadows together. Remember?" The woman beside him nodded, though her wide eyes betrayed her. "We've defeated shadows before. We can do it again." The crowd shifted, uncertainty swirling with every heartbeat. As the immense figure leaned closer, its presence heavy with foreboding, whispers erupted around them. People muttered about their regrets and failures surfacing anew, dragging them back into despair. But there, at the forefront, the young man they had saved stood steady, his face flushed with newfound courage. "You're not real," he called out, voice breaking through the oppressive air. "You're just a piece of what we've felt. We're not afraid anymore." The monolithic figure recoiled momentarily, confusion rippling across its dark features. For a moment, it seemed the shadows had lost their grip. The man could feel the light from the book pulsing in his hands, bathing him in warmth that stoked the embers of hope within him. "Let us show them what we're really made of," he said, rallying the crowd. On 3, 1, 2, 3. Together, they cried out in unified defiance, voices weaving together like threads in a tapestry. "You will not control us." The words hung in the air, marking an invisible barrier against the encroaching dread. The monstrous figure howled, its roar shaking the ground like thunder. Yet the power of their belief cracked the air around them. The book surged with brilliant light, illuminating the shadows that clawed for dominance. In that moment of chaos, the young man joined the others. "Hold onto your truth," he yelled, eyes fierce. "Your memories don't define you." With each proclamation, their surroundings shifted. Shadows melted into the light, revealing identities long forgotten, fears long buried. The immense form flickered, bits of darkness spilling like ink from a spent pen. The figures it had embodied flickered and faded, echoes of their past being absorbed back into the void. The atmosphere thickened, and yet, the man felt a different kind of energy. It was electric, vibrant, alive. He glanced at the woman, a spark lighting in his chest. "We can drive it away." The crowd rallied, pressing forward. Their words surged like waves crashing against a craggy shore. The truth was resonating, transforming doubt into power. "We are strong. We will not yield." But the figure, now contorted and frantic, unleashed one last anguished cry, booming through the air. "You cannot defeat what you fear most." The man's heart raced. The shadows snarled, forming into twisted faces, images of the past, moments drenched in misery. It was true. The memories were haunting. They lingered like silhouettes at dusk. Yet, right as despair threatened to wrap around him again, he realized a painful but necessary truth. Our strength is not the absence of fear, but our willingness to face it. At that, a shimmer of light erupted from the book, exploding outward in every direction. The shadows faltered as its brilliance engulfed them, revealing the battle they had to fight on every level, the one within as much as the one outside. As the darkness collided against the onslaught of their collective truth, the monstrous figure reared back, uncertain and shaking. Its form twisted like a dark storm threatening to dissipate. But then, with a snap, the ground shook again. The sky opened with an unholy crack that split the air. A deeper darkness poured through, swallowing the light, and a new night seemed to rise from that black abyss. "Stay together," the woman screamed, but already he could see eyes darting in fear. What waited beyond that rift? The man gripped the book tighter, heart pounding. What new horrors were about to emerge from the depths of the void? Their fears, it appeared, were far from done. Just as the shadows began to recede, a surge of icy air ripped through the crowd. It snaked around their ankles, chilling them to the bone. A new presence filled the air, darker and more oppressive than before. The man clenched his teeth, steeling himself against the wave of terror that threatened to rise anew. "What is that?" someone whispered, wide-eyed. The crowd surged backward, a wave of panic rippling through like a sudden gust of wind blowing out a candleless flame. The sky above them twisted into violent hues, deeper shades of night spilled across the horizon, swirling like a monstrous whirlpool preparing to consume everything in its path. Deep roars echoed from the gaping crack, primal sounds that resonated with a haunting familiarity. Is this what fear feels like? The woman beside him's voice quivered, cutting through the chaos. Fear painted her features, stark against the deepening darkness around them. "No," he shouted, eyes burning with determination. "This is not the end. We've faced our fears before. We can face this too." But even as he voiced it, doubt gnawed at him. Whatever emerged from that rift, it felt ancient and powerful, like the very essence of despair birthed from their darkest moments. Then it happened. A figure began to emerge, creeping through the fissure in reality. Writhing shadows coalesced, taking shape. An entity formed slowly, an abstract blend of confusion and agony. Its features were obscured, indistinct, yet laden with malice. "Who dares summon me?" The voice curled around them, smooth yet jagged, filling their minds not just with sound, but with an overwhelming sense of hopelessness. The man's heart thundered as he fought to keep his footing. "Stay strong," he yelled, but the weight of the words felt light against the oncoming storm. Suddenly, the young man, the one who had ignited courage, shouted back defiantly, "You're not a part of us. You can't have us." The figure froze for a moment, a flicker of confusion crossing over its ghastly features. It faltered, dissolving slightly, as if struggling against the truth woven into his words. The crowd steadied themselves, each trying to regain the courage that once fueled them. Yet, the shadows surrounding them began to shudder, igniting in a panic as consciousness expanded in the light of their defiance. The monstrous figure writhed, still powerful but uncertain. It was losing its grip on them. "Fools!" it roared, a deep timbre laced with fury. "You think you can erase me? I embody your darkness. Your sin is woven into my flesh. No more." The woman cried, stepping boldly ahead. "You distort what we've been through. You fed off our fears. But now we take back our power." As she spoke, radiant light shot from the book, forming a barrier against the swirling shadows. The air crackled with intensity as the crowd erupted once more in unity. "We are not defined by our past." The figure launched forward, a grotesque roar escaping its lips, swirling tendrils of darkness lunging toward them like a viper ready to strike. But as the light surged, the darkness began to crystallize, breaking apart into shards that scattered like ashes on the wind. There was power in their declaration, and the darkness wasn't ready for it. Yet, just as hope swelled, something unexpected happened. The ground began to tremble again, but this time it was different. The very earth beneath them split, and they all toppled as the ground opened into a gaping maw. "What is happening?" someone screamed. The man's heart dropped. "Stay together," he shouted, though his voice was now strained, fighting against the chaos. Pieces of their world seemed to be disappearing, truth unraveling with each heartbeat. And from that chasm, a soft whisper emerged, a sultry, chilling voice that caressed his ear. "Do you really think you can face what lies within?" That question hung in the air, dripping with malevolence. The sense of foreboding deepened. What else lurked in the depths of their own shadows? As he grappled with the uncertainty, a single tear rolled down his cheek, a mix of fear and fierce determination blossomed in his heart. What awaited them now? Would they confront their demons, or would the abyss swallow them whole? In that moment of hesitation, the answer lay just beyond reach, a truth waiting to engulf them once more. The ground quaked and splintered, swallowing the air with a menacing roar. Cracks snaked outwards like veins, whispering of chaos and loss beneath the surface. Panic spread like wildfire, eyes darting, hearts racing. "Run!" Someone screamed, a voice cracking with desperation. But where? The fissure gaped wide, a dark invitation to the unknown, as if the abyss itself beckoned them in. "No! Stay together!" shouted the man, trying to rally the group, but the chaos was loud and unforgiving. People stumbled and fell, tumbled over by the terror that swept through them like a fierce wind. The shadows seemed to stretch their fingers, tugging at the edges of reality, pulling them closer to the void. The figure emerging from the rift began to morph, twisting, its features now jagged and grotesque. Fangs glinted in the darkness like shards of broken dreams. "You cannot escape your past," it taunted, a voice dripping with malice that echoed through the quaking ground. "You invite suffering. You are mine." A heavy weight pressed upon the man's chest as he watched the crowd falter. Fear etched itself into their faces, and he felt it creeping into his own heart. Memories began to flash before him, moments of failure, heartbreak, and regret. It was as if the very darkness they fought against was pulling from their personal histories, amplifying doubts until the very air felt thick and suffocating. "Stand firm," shouted the woman beside him, her breath shallow but her resolve shining through. "We're more than what we fear. We're strong." As her words echoed, the cracked ground beneath them seemed to vibrate, blinking in and out of existence like a heartbeat fighting for life. With that, a rush of warmth spilled from the book she clutched. It illuminated the edges of the chasm, casting flickering shadows that danced upon the walls like whispers of hope fighting against despair. Yet the monstrous visage only wrinkled in disdain, summoning dark tendrils that stretched toward the crowd, eager to seize their joy. The man steadied himself and drew strength from the woman's unwavering stance. "We can't let it deceive us," he cried out, forcing his voice to rise above the cacophony. "We are not powerless. Together we face this." In that moment, something shifted within the crowd. One by one, eyes met. A spark ignited as they remembered their journeys, their battles conquered. They were woven together by stories of resilience, forged in the fire of their shared struggles. As they clasped hands, the flickering light intensified, a blazing beacon against the encroaching shadows. "Let us take back what is ours," someone yelled, and what started as a whisper turned into a deafening roar, carrying hope through the air like a battle cry. But the darkness wasn't done. With a violent shriek, it lunged, sweeping the air thick with despair as the ground trembled once more, unrelenting. The connection formed threatened to snap under the weight of their fears, and the man felt his soul being pulled in both directions, a longing for safety and the dreadful urge to flee into the darkness. "Hold on," shouted the young man, still defiant. "Don't let go." But as his words rang out, the ground lurched violently, and the abyss gaped wider, revealing a swirling mass that reflected faces long gone. The man's heart pounded in his chest, confusion and terror entangling his thoughts. What were these things? Memories? Echoes of the past? Just then, he caught a fleeting glimpse of something at the edge, a shadow in the darkness that made his heart freeze. It was familiar, yet dreadful, a figure lost to time and memory, one he thought he had buried deep. "Do you see it?" he whispered, chills prickling down his spine. And as the faces in the dark twisted with fear, he realized some things never truly stayed buried. With one last surge of defiance, he reached for the light, but as he did, the shadows surged, hungry, ready to claim them all. What awaited them in that endless void? Would they discover their truth, or would they be consumed by the very darkness they sought to escape? As the abyss loomed, larger, the question echoed through the depths. Relentless and haunting, were they brave enough to face what lay beneath? The air crackled with tension, the crowd caught in that moment before everything changed. Shadows swirled and danced, casting dark reflections of their deepest fears. The man held the book tighter, its warmth pulsing against his palm, igniting the flickering hope within. He glanced at the woman beside him, their eyes entwined in shared determination. "We can do this," he whispered, conviction lacing his voice. "Together," she responded, her words igniting the thrill of unity within him. With a collective deep breath, they squared their shoulders, standing firm against the encroaching darkness. The monstrous figure loomed larger, shadowy tendrils reaching out with a hunger that chilled their bones. Yet, as the crowd connected, a wave of warmth surged through them, a tether of humanity woven into strength. "Remember who you are," someone shouted from the fringes. "Remember the light in your heart." The words rippled through the crowd like a shockwave, firming their resolve. With renewed energy, they pushed forward, towards the shadows tinged with old memories. "No more," they cried in unison, voices echoing with defiance. "We own our past, but it doesn't define our future." The figures in the darkness shrieked, writhing as if somehow cut by their courageous declarations. Yes, they would not be choked by fear. As they stood arm in arm, courage transformed into a force that reacted against the shadows. The book pulsed brighter, casting an awe-inspiring glow that cut through the darkness like a lighthouse through a storm. "Channel the light," the woman shouted. Each person present remembered their victories, the laughter shared, bonds forged, and loves reclaimed. As if on cue, the memories surged, rushing through them like a river breaking free of a dam. The light from the book engulfed them, vibrant as sunbeams piercing through stormy clouds. The monstrous figure halted, confusion flashing across its twisted features. "You cannot escape," it bellowed, voice clawing at their ears. But the crowd stood unyielding. "We are more than this moment," they replied, voices strong and clear, grounded in truth. "We are more than what you think we are." And with that simple thought, the shadows hesitated. Time slowed as if the very universe held its breath. The man felt the intensity of their collective energy. They were no longer simply avoiding the darkness. They were claiming their place in the light, with newfound clarity. He raised the book high above them, calling forth its power. "We will not surrender." His voice broke through the cacophony. It vibrated with essence, shining bright, sending shockwaves of brilliance through the crowd. As the shadows recoiled, the massive figure stumbled backward, confusion and rage flickering as dawn's light broke through once more. "This cannot be. Watch us," the young man shouted out, stepping forward, energized by woven destinies illuminated. "We are not afraid," the shadows screamed, twisting and contorting as the light intensified, illuminating every corner of their gathering. It seemed that, at last, they were winning the battle in a final struggle. The entity let out a roar that shook the very ground beneath their feet, but the combined force of unwavering will pushed against it. Light poured forth like blinding fire, enveloping the shadows until the monstrous figure shrank, swallowed back into obscurity. With one last flash, the book shattered the darkness, its pages fluttering like butterflies before merging with the horizon. The shadows melted into nothingness, leaving only stillness in their wake. Yet, as the dust settled, their hearts raced with a realization a bond had formed, stronger than shadows, resilient as the sun. They turned together, watching the horizon shift like a new beginning. "Look, it's over," the woman said softly, eyes glistening with hope. "We faced the darkness and claimed our sanctuary." And in that moment, a startling revelation washed over them. They had created a new dominion, a sanctuary together, with every heartbeat, every shared moment leading to this. The man inhaled deeply, the weight of fear lifting like a veil. "We will protect it together." As they embraced, the townsfolk rallied around each other, forging new bonds that would last far beyond the confrontation. Sharing laughter and stories would fill the air like sunlight, warm and vibrant. As they drifted toward the dawn of a solid future in the distance, the sun met the horizon. A vibrant palette of colors painted the sky, echoes of their victory lingering, revealing a promised knowledge, growth, and an everlasting light that would guide them. And here, beneath the new dawn, they found their final truth. The strength to face any shadow lay not in fear, but in unity and love. Let us choose light every day, the young man said, determination gleaming in his eyes. Yes, the woman affirmed, the whispers of hope surrounding them. Together we will remain strong. The last vestiges of shadows dissolved into the past, and as the townsfolk walked away, hearts full and spirits high, the promise of endless horizons awaited them as this incredible chapter closes. Remember, what battles will you confront? Will you stand firm in your own truth? If you loved this story and want more heart-stopping tales, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to energize the algorithm. And don't forget to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Finally, instantly share this with 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. They deserve to experience this journey too.